A warm hello to all the women that had the experience of giving birth. First of all, excuse me that I'm doing this video in English, but I'm simply not comfortable enough with my Greek, therefore I will add subtitles down here for you. My name is Lisa, I'm 30 years old and I had the chance to give birth to two wonderful little babies. These births have been some life-changing events in my life, but each one of them was so different. In fact, they both have been so different to each other as it can be. But more on that later. Why am I here today? First I shall explain where I am. I'm in a Greek public hospital where I gave birth to my firstborn daughter. And today is the 25th of November 2017. Today is the day women worldwide lay down pink roses. Why do they do that? Every 25th of November is the day against violence towards women. But not only this, it has also now become the day of obstetric violence. What is obstetric violence, you may wonder? I would like to explain this for all of you by taking my own first birth as an example. As you all know, if you are 40 weeks pregnant in Greece, you are totally due to give birth to your baby. So was I when I was 40 weeks plus 5 days pregnant, although due to my sloppy gynecologist, who never took notes of any of our examinations in pregnancy, we never knew for sure when the actual due date was. And due to my unstable cycle, it was definitely later than the estimated day. Therefore, I had to introduce myself to this hospital to be induced. And now, my personal nightmare of a birth began. First thing I got was a venous access into my arm and my first painful vaginal examination. Next thing was that I had to lay down to be examined with the ultrasound. I told the doctor that I was getting nauseous and dizzy because the baby was laying directly on my vena cava, that's the big vein that is going backwards to the heart. And when the baby lays on that and pressures it, the blood flow stops, and doesn't stop completely, but it stops to a degree that you get dizzy. And I told him that, but he chose to ignore me. These things were the first cases of violence against me, because all of these first things that had happened to me were without my consent. They never asked me. Putting a needle in someone's arm without asking is bodily harm, a criminal assault. Same counts for the vaginal examination. Then I was brought upstairs, had to change into one of those hospital robes where everybody could see your butt. But I was given an enema to empty my bowels. What a nice thing. This one, again, without my consent, was even applied wrong, and since I'm a nurse, I know how to do it, and I didn't empty successfully. So, what was the point of that after all? Next thing I remember was that I was brought into a room without windows, sorry. There were no windows. For 14 hours I haven't seen sunlight. Although I gave birth in the night, that's what I remember. Anyways, in this room were four, I would call them examination tables, with one cardiotocograph each. This would be my new home for the next 14 hours. My husband wasn't allowed to support me with my fears and worries. I wasn't even speaking properly Greek back then. He was sitting outside all those hours, also not knowing what was going on. He was allowed 2 or 3 times to visit me for a couple of minutes. I remained bed-bound for most of the following hours. In fact, if I hadn't known myself how important it was to move during labor, I would have stayed there all the time. Truly, nobody came and asked how I was, if I could be helped anything, if I had fears or else. The only time someone showed up was to examine me internally in a very painful way. No preparation for the pain whatsoever. And I can tell you, the pains of the contractions are nothing compared to the pain that I had experienced while I had to lay down during these examinations. I always hated it to go to the gynecologist, because this area down below is my most sacred place, and I always feel ashamed of exposing it to strangers. And suddenly there were 5, 6, 7 people staring at it. I don't even know if anybody realized that I had a face. I wasn't allowed to drink or to eat those 14 hours, always in order to be ready for surgery. Because usually women that are introduced end up having a cesarean section, were the words of my gynecologist afterwards. I stole myself away several times, told them I needed to walk, and I met my husband who had water for me. I was drinking desperately. I mean, hello? I truly felt like a prisoner without rights. After 5 minutes, I was obliged to go back in and be captivated again to the cardiotocograph of my drip feeding. I was dilating very slow, of course. I was a first-time mother-to-be. Therefore, though, they decided to break my waters, and again there was no preparation to how painful this kind of treatment is. The next thing I remember was that suddenly the anesthesiologist stood behind me and offered me an epidural. How kind of him, you would think now. But I was bursting out in tears because since nobody spoke to me and explained me the progress of my birth, I thought, they know something I do not know. They are keeping secrets. I'm gonna have surgery. His arrogant assistant, seeing the tears running down my face, just said, well, if she doesn't want it, we will just go. After some time of consideration, I was allowed to call them back and had my epidural done. If I just hadn't. It wasn't working properly. The doctor had to give me drugs every 5 minutes. And when I was about to push my baby out, I was shaking from the drug level in my veins and the lack of real food and water during the last 12 hours. When my baby was about to come out, I had my perineum cut, and yes, it does freaking hurt, even if you're having a cut during a contraction, and again, without being asked. Just in order to speed things up. My baby was there, I saw it, but I was so overwhelmed by what just had happened to me, and by that I mean the treatment I perceived, that I couldn't even be happy. I held it in my arms for a few minutes, while I was giving the final dose of oxytocin to speed up the placenta. And a woman, I don't even know if it was a midwife or the cleaning lady, nobody introduced themselves to me, tried to put the baby to my breast in order for it to drink. Because the labor was difficult though, my newborn of course didn't succeed and was taken away for further examination. And I don't actually know what else. I saw her again 3.5 hours later, fed up with formula, washed and tucked in. She was denied her right of breast milk. In fact, they were so afraid that newborns would starve to death or have a blood sugar crisis, not given immediately something to eat. Full-term babies, though, are much able to survive without any damage the first hours without milk. As did my second child prove to us. But what do? They give the baby cow milk instead of working on a good mother-breastfeeding relationship. At that point I have to add that this hospital where I'm right now is having a new baby-friendly program, and they are supporting breastfeeding now and doing many things to make moms breastfeed successfully. And I can applaud to that. That's a really good thing they do, but it unfortunately happened after the birth that I had here. Anyways, my baby was giving antibiotics without me having been consulted. During my time in this hospital, I was never asked how I was or heard some nice words, how good I did, that I just gave birth to another tiny soul. Nobody came and showed me how to breastfeed. I did it completely on my own and therefore was so much in pain, but I was again ignored. They kindly gave me every morning my painkillers and my dose of antibiotics. And there were many more things during my time in this hospital that I actually would put into a scenery of a third world country, but I won't mention them here anymore. I think you got a good image of what defines obstetric violence. My firstborn child is a high allergic child that has on the one hand the genetics for this, but is the only one in this family with such a big allergic impact. I am very much convinced that the way she was forced to be born plays a big role in her current health situation. Now, I told you that I had twice the experience of giving birth. Many of you will probably call me now all sorts of things. for example, irresponsible, egoistic, and going backwards to Middle Ages again. But my second baby I welcomed at home, kneeling in front of my couch, listening to my most favorite music, smelling the incense of my tea and well-known surroundings. My husband and my friend, which is helping me with the video, so come here and show yourself a little bit. That's a birth supporter here. And well, my husband and my friend all the time with me, supporting me. My two midwives calmed me down, explained every next stage of labor, taught me the methods to endure the pain and how to move to ease the baby's passing through the pelvic bones. Nobody cut my perineum, although I had to have 2 stitches afterwards. My baby seemed to be a proper one with its 4,300 grams. When the pediatrician showed up later on, he was, how can I say, kind of upset, because such big babies should not be born at home. What he probably wanted to say was, such big babies should be only born by C-section. No, thanks. I rapidly found myself another pediatrician that was more open-minded. However, this birth was so healing for me because nature was allowed to do its job. I wasn't afraid at any point during this labor because I knew I had to put myself in the best possible hands for this job, my midwives. And what can I say, my second baby is such a completely healthy and such a calm little thing. Now I'm definitely not saying every woman should give birth at home. No, everyone who needs to have the security of a hospital should choose to go there. But after those 2 very different experiences, I understood that all of us women who choose to have babies should trust themselves, their bodies and their babies again. No mammal in the world is giving birth laying on their back, pushing upwards against gravity and not moving during labor. Don't let doctors treat you as if you and your baby were a disease that needs to be treated with drugs and other interferences, such as forceps or C-section. Now, C-sections are sometimes quite necessary. I don't doubt that. Sometimes emergencies are happening and C-sections are life-saving. But in most of the cases, C-sections could be avoided by entrusting in a mother's instinct and keeping away fear from the delivery room. Because fear is what makes a birth pathological, what makes birth stop, what makes birth need interference. So, in order for me now to close this case of traumatic labor, my case, I lay down this rose and leave behind my story. Because what happened to me happened to a million other women and will happen to even more. If we, the women who give birth to the next generation, don't change that. Rose's Revolution wants to make aware of obstetric violence in order to change this cruel situation in hospitals. I thank you all very much for watching this and wish you the very best of luck, that you may have beautiful and magic birth experiences. In case you're interested to talk to me about your experiences or about any other questions, please contact me via Rose's Revolution Greece on Facebook. I would be really glad if I could be of any help. Thank you all very much and goodbye. Okay, let's go. This is the first time that this happens in Greece. Welcome to Greece, Rose's Revolution. I hope we will change something.